Hello, North Haven, Wallingford, Durham, and East Haven. Is that correct? I'm here with Senator Paul Ciccarella. We are North Haven NHTV, and thank you to the studio and all the people that work here and volunteer and to support local access TV. Tonight we're going to go over the legislative session of 2021. We wrapped up, but we actually have to go back to special session this week. The job, we're both honored to serve, but it's technically part-time, but it's really all year round. It's 7 days a week, 365, and we're both honored to serve. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Senator Ciccarella, and then we're going to discuss Senator Ciccarilla's first session, what we've done, what we want to continue to do, and be involved in all of our communities. So thank you all, and thank you, Senator Ciccarella. Paul.
Thank you. And so we are going to kind of recap our my first session and this interesting session that it was with all the challenges of COVID and the specifics of how it was not a normal session. And I am looking forward to getting back in the building and seeing what it's really like with the public being able to enter their building and really to get a good understanding of how it works, not in this Zoom world. So excited to get back to a sense of normal, both out of the Capitol, but mainly to see what it's going to be like when we don't have those challenges. So we're going to touch on a few things if you want to start.
I will, but so what we did to the public, we did have a committee session or committee meetings all through Zoom, via Zoom. And it worked fairly well, but the problem there is the public really is not engaged, and the legislators aren't engaged as well as normally, because you want the public, you want to listen to the public, you want to hear what they have to say, and then act on that. I will say, Paul, you did a really good job. It wasn't easy to navigate, and you did well. And then when we started in the session days in April, May, and June, you really found your way around well. And we're going to talk, the first bill we're going to talk about is a sensitive subject. It was a bipartisan bill, but really Senator Paul Ciccarella led it. We all helped a little, and that's Tristan's Law. And Paul, would you let the viewers know what it was? And
Sure, that'd be my pleasure. We spoke briefly on it on our last show.
Correct.
And unfortunately, there was an incident that took place last year where a young child was just enjoying the ice cream truck, and on his way back from getting the ice cream was struck by a passing vehicle. And I was familiar with other situations in my profession, and I realized that there was no laws in place to protect the children and the patrons of the ice cream truck, also the ice cream truck company, as well as the cars that are passing by. It's hard to understand if they're vending ice cream, and sometimes people are just in a rush and not paying attention and zoom right by. So unfortunately, after getting the ice cream, Tristan was struck, and his mother reached out to numerous legislators, both on the Senate and House side, both sides as well, and her advocacy for this issue and her child really got the ball rolling to put this legislation forward. And I always say how important it is to hear from our constituents about their issues, because truly we're there to be their voice, and this was a great example of that. So after speaking to Mrs. Carano, I started reaching out to senior legislators like Dave and many others, and Dave was a big helped me navigate the process. I reached out on both sides of the aisle, explained the situation, and everybody was willing to help. And it was a really interesting process to see us propose the idea, have public hearings, which I wish we did have the opportunity to have the people inside the House instead of doing it in a Zoom way. But it was very interesting to see it all come together, and we were able to sign Tristan's Law into effect the July of this year. And we're just hoping that no children or other pedestrians will be affected, and that's what we're here to do, is to put good legislation that's going to make it safe and help the constituents, and that was a great example of that.
And amazingly, many of those trucks have the arm that's going to be put in place if it's not currently in place, and if it wasn't put in place, it's not that expensive to put, as far as putting it on the truck. So you did really well. It was a really bipartisan bill, and that's the best legislation, is working together, getting things done, and I think you did a very good job with that. And so then we did a lot of other things. We had a bipartisan budget. We'll get into that later, I think, because we're trying to, it's the first show we've done in a while, and we could talk about Cedar Hills and North Haven or some other things.
Sure, why don't you start with Cedar Hills? That was
something that a former legislator, Bill Gambardella, served in the House of Representatives of Connecticut back, I believe, Bill served the late 80s into the early 90s, and we remained friends. We're on the same age. And he had come to me, Senator Fasano and myself passed something similar in 2015. There's called the Cedar Hills District in North Haven, Connecticut. That's where PC Richards is, the old rail line. It's one of the oldest rail lines in the country, but there's about 90 acres of undeveloped property. What we did is, and Paul, you helped on this, we had a public hearing, we brought all the stakeholders in, and we're trying to create a tax district, infrastructure district for North Haven, Connecticut, which will help New Haven also, but mainly the districts in North Haven. It's 90 acres of land, and the goal is to bring a glass recycling company here and an anaerobic digestion company to North Haven. And it did pass, the governor did sign it, it was a bipartisan bill. But that bill took a while to get going because with many pieces of legislation, the language has to be just right. And I have to thank really the chair of the committee did a great job, Christine McCarthy-Vey. She's a Democrat. We worked together so well, and she'd call me many nights. And our attorneys, Greg Hannon, they don't get the credit they really deserve, but our attorneys and our staff do a great job. So that bill did pass, and you supported it, and I spoke to Mike Fried about it. He's excited. It's going to take some time now, but it's something that started with Bill and the companies, started Len and I 5-6 years ago, and now this really creates the full district. There's going to be remediation, but the companies are going to pay for that. At least, maybe Deep will get involved, but it's something important for our community. It's all about jobs. When I first ran, I can't believe it's 2010. It's always about jobs, education, jobs, and helping one another. And I think that's what I try to do still, and we did it together.
Absolutely, it was a great project. I know you guys have been working on this for a while, but again, it's good for the environment. There is a lot of environmental issues with glass, amongst other environmental issues.
Recycling,
glass is really tough to and expensive to get rid of because it's so heavy, and there's not a lot of places that could properly break it down and reuse it. So if we were able to get one of those places, it's also good for the environment, but creating jobs.
High-paying jobs, and it's vacant land that's been sitting there for decades and decades. Back under, I think, Governor O'Neill, when Bill was there, they tried to do something, and then Kevin Kopech tried to do something. Legislation takes a long time. You did really well your first year at Christian's Law. You had a lot of, we all worked together on that, but that was really good. But it does take time, and when I first got elected, I don't know how you feel, Paul, I say, why is it so slow, cumbersome in some senses? But I think it should be in a way, because you want to hear all sides. We might have one view, somebody else might have another view, but then that's why the public hearings are so important. And it makes a better piece of legislation. There was some controversial legislation that the stakeholders on either side were not even in the building up until last week. So now tonight we're filming this show July 12th. Up until July 6th, there was nobody in the Capitol. And we went back last week because we're trying to change the juvenile age for all these car thefts and all the break-ins. And it was it was an event that was very important. It was a bipartisan event. For the most part, there were police chiefs and mayors and first selectmen were there. But it was nice to see the public walking in the Capitol. And I went up to some families and said, it's just so wonderful to see you walking in the people's house, Connecticut's house. And I know you feel strong. You put legislation in for, not that you want to hurt, you want these kids to learn a lesson. And it's been going on for 6-7 years. Breaking in or stealing cars or breaking into garages. I know you had some legislation and none of it passed, but I think because everything that's happening in New Britain and Glastonbury, hopefully we're going to get some traction.
Absolutely. It's a very serious issue. And you spoke on 3 really interesting things that I'd like to elaborate on. As we were saying, coming into this, being in a Zoom world, it was really hard to see everything get put together. And every single meeting felt the same because you're staring into a laptop and you have a little bunch of boxes trying to make sense and really get an understanding of what each meeting was like. I recall when I went up to the Capitol with Len, when Len was the senator, and the building had a buzz to it. It had
Energy.
An amazing energy. And walking through the halls when we were let back in, we had to make our votes inside the building, even though we didn't all have to be inside, the chambers where we really should be, and we'll touch on that after. But it's going to be great to get the people back in the building for so many reasons, because it is so important that they get the opportunity, the people get the opportunity to speak on these issues, because you spoke about the problems that come in when people just make bills and we don't hear both sides and we don't hear what our people have to say, that the unintended consequences of legislation sometimes could be so much more detrimental than the good it was intended to do. And that's why it does need to take time. And to really make sure that there is no unintended consequences that will do more damage when it's really proposed to help. You also spoke on the bills that were proposed, and again, not putting forward so many bills, because it really should take a lot of time to really understand what you're going to do, who it's going to affect, everybody it's going to affect. And I put only 9 bills forward, Tristan's Law being one, amongst a few others, and we could touch on those and maybe some of the ones that you put forward.
You helped me with another, we'll talk about it later, very important bill.
When veterans, we'd like to definitely touch on that. But I definitely put forward one of the bills about public safety and trying to address the situation with all of these minors that are breaking into these vehicles. And it started that way, and they're taking stuff out of the vehicle, then they started to take the vehicles. And unfortunately, there's no repercussions. And I understand that children make mistakes and you don't want them to have to deal with the consequences for their whole life. But unfortunately, I think we're being a little too lenient, because now it's getting more and more dangerous. I'm speaking to police chiefs and constituents in district and out. That's one of their biggest issues. And even when I was knocking on doors campaigning, that was one of the biggest issues that were put forward. They don't feel safe in their own town, and they moved to the 34th district, Wallingford, North Haven, East Haven, because it was a safe town. And unfortunately, because of other legislation and unintended consequences, our poor police officers have their hands tied, and we really need to pay attention to that as well.
People don't realize that an officer cannot pursue unless there's imminent danger. And many times, and kids will get brought in and they'll say to the officer, you can only hold me 6 hours. And this is their 13th, 14th, 15th offense. And I go back to, or you want to learn a lesson. I don't know how much time we have, but it's probably like a 2-minute story.
Tell it.
When I was 16, me and my friends, and God rest his soul, Mr. Corey, he had a fishing pond, and you had to pay to fish there. Well, one night we all said, oh, we're going to go fishing. Jumped over the fence, got arrested. North Haven, had to go to the North Haven Police Department, in the jail, and we had to get fingerprinted, and I lost all my fishing equipment. I know it sounds like a crazy story, but lost all my fishing equipment along with my friends, had to go to court, and had to plead youthful offender for fishing illegally. Kids are stealing cars, breaking into houses, hurting girls, assaulting people, and nothing is happening. So I learned, it really scared me. And I lost all my fishing equipment, and I know that sounds maybe trivial to some people, but it taught me a lesson. And that's the thing, and you want these kids to have mentoring or have a better life. But we're going to work on that. We're hoping to go back in a couple of weeks. We do have to go back this week. We have to go back, Paul and I, the whole General Assembly, July 14th, special session. The governor wants to extend his executive powers for another 6 months. I'm going to vote no. Nothing against the governor. I think he's done an overall good job with COVID, but I don't think we're in an emergency any longer. Our numbers are really low. We're one of the best we both are vaccinated. Our families are vaccinated. We're one of the best in the country, Connecticut. So I think we're elected to legislate and create laws and work for the public, and the governor's the executive side, and I think it's time that he works with the 4 legislative caucuses. With all respect, I'm going to vote no. I don't know, Wednesday.
I also agree with you, and I voted no the last time.
I did too, yeah.
And on the floor, we spoke of the reasons for the no vote. And again, that was one of the things that I was going to touch on is when we are speaking in that, for us, when there's 36 of us in there and we're speaking on that circle, it's not only just to talk to the camera and have our constituents hear us. It's a debate. We're there to change the minds or get people to agree with us or for somebody to change my mind.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, again, I'm a pretty neutral kind of a guy, and I said that campaigning, and I get along with everybody up there, and that's what made it pretty easy for me to get Tristan's law pushed across, is to work together for the good of the constituents. And again, it's not an insult, but unfortunately, there was not many Democrats sitting around that circle. And, I would have a conversation with somebody prior to a bill being heard, be in agreement with this individual, and the vote comes, they vote in the other way, and I see him in the hallway, and I say, we talked about this. Can you explain to me why you did that? And he's like, oh, I didn't know that's what that did. And I'm like, and then the comment, I'll take a look at it. But unfortunately, after the vote happens, there's nothing that could be done, and that happens all too often. And we're going to need to really pay attention to that and make sure, and I know we're talking in the 34th district here, but at a state level, that we're making sure that representatives are representing us and paying attention to the legislation.
You're right. Like in the House, we are in the chamber all the time. I'm constantly in the chamber. My role is to watch what's going on, to negotiate or work with our members or the other members. But our leader, Vin Candelora, made it a point that we had to be in the chamber. At one point, we were not, only 50% were allowed, and little by little, we all went back in, and we had to wear our masks, but we went back in. And, many times, to your point, many people did not know the legislation or they didn't listen to the debate. And I've changed my mind on debates. I think it's a good thing if you could listen to something and say, I think they're right, and maybe I was wrong, or vice versa. And I've got up to speak and try to, convince people. It doesn't always work. Sometimes it does. But back in February when we voted to extend the executive orders, I said in the floor that, back March 2020, we all gave the governor his legislative powers. And again, I think overall his administration did a very good job. He's got Josh Cabell from the science world, David Lehman from the business world. They've really helped him quite a bit, and he did listen to them. But it comes to a point where we're out of the crisis, thank God, and that we have done a good job, and that he should work with the four caucuses. If that's too much, work with the four legislative leaders, the respective leaders. There's a reason we have the three branches of government. It's what our founding fathers wanted. It's no person should have that much authority and that much power. In an emergency, for a short while, yes, but a year and a half later, after we've come out of the pandemic and after we've done a good job, we should stay on this path, and as many people as possible, if they so choose to get vaccinated, and I hope they will, and just keep opening businesses and opening the Capitol and opening schools.
I agree with you there, and the viewers may not know the specifics of kind of how his orders or powers really affect us. I'll get a phone call to talk about an issue, and not only am I not in the room to speak to the governor and let him know what our constituents are saying, but our leaders, as you said, are not in the room and being able to give input of what the constituents are saying. There's one person in a room making decisions,
right.
And as you said, that's not how this system was designed.
It shouldn't be that way.
It should not be that way, and we really need to make sure that everybody's voices are heard, and
right.
We let them know that we have to get back to a sense of normal, and we have to utilize these equal branches of government so everybody has a voice at the table.
It's good to see kids outside playing, kids playing sports, adults, walking, and it's nice to see, us getting back to a way of life we all want to have and strive to have. So let's talk about, this was your first budget. I've been there in the Capitol, honorably serving, or thankfully serving the people of North Haven. It's my second budget I voted for, both bipartisan, 2017, which we've reaped so many benefits to this day, and I think we will for years to come with the volatility, bond, and spending cap. They're maybe boring, but they're very vital. We have nearly $4 billion in the rainy day fund now. That's from the volatility cap. It's excess revenue from income tax and the Wall Street. We've done really well in Connecticut. And then the spending cap and the bond cap. And in this budget, we kept, on the bonding and spending side, we kept below those those caps. We did not raise taxes. There was a separate bill that was the tax for truckers, which we both voted against. We voted against that, which I thought was very unfair to our truckers. But we did vote for the bill, the bipartisan budget, fully funds education at a great level, greater than normal. The town side is funded. A lot of critical services, I think, were funded. And how did you feel about like supporting the budget and voting for the budget?
So being on appropriations and paying attention
Right.
and listening to a lot of the conversations back and forth, we talked about me only proposing very few bills, and one of which was to talk about ways to save money so we don't have to raise taxes, find where we're wasting money. It's
Right.
how we do it in our businesses, we do it in our homes, and I think the state should do it as well. Find where we're wasting money and reallocate that money to the needed areas and the services.
Right.
But that didn't make it very far. So getting back to the budget, as you said, there wasn't a tax increase. We did get government or federal funding because of this COVID. We did have a good year with the sales tax, and you could elaborate a little bit more on how we're collecting sales tax online and how that helped us. But, we did a lot of work, to kind of take things out of there.
Right.
So it would be hard not to support it, and it was a decision that I had to think long and hard about to
Right.
support this budget. But we put a lot of work in to take away additional spending so we did not have to raise the taxes. A lot of people say, oh, you supported their budget. Maybe it wouldn't have been the budget that if it was like it was, 4 years back when there was
tied in the Senate.
tied in the Senate, where all of those good things were put into place. All of those caps and the way that we created that rainy day fund. Senator Len Fasano did a heck of a job leading, the Senate
He did.
and making sure that those things were put into place. And if we did not have that money, it would be a lot different. And we did not have those spending caps and all of those different legislation that would protect our bank, if you will. I ultimately supported the budget. We did a lot of work on the budget, and all in all, I think it was a smart vote of a yes vote.
So Paul serves on appropriations. That's the spending the money or allocating money. I serve on finance and the bonding subcommittee. So on when the budget first was presented to us, we were all a no vote, and many Democrats were a no vote. It was just a really bad budget. It was the governor's original budget, but then the Democrats' budget was even worse. But the good thing is that you work together, both parties, finance committee and the appropriations committee, and we ended up taking all the bad stuff out. It would have never passed. To Governor Lamont's credit, he didn't want any massive tax increases. Some of my friends on the other side of the aisle wanted a lot of tax increases. But there was enough people to come together and say, listen, we promised the teachers 4 years ago to increase their deduction for the Connecticut income tax up to 50%. We got that put back in. We listened to our teachers. For our seniors, our pensions are being phased out. Eventually, starting, I think, in
taxes on the pension.
Connecticut income tax. Thank you. It's Connecticut income taxes. And eventually, the IRA, the income tax on IRAs in Connecticut will be slowly phased out. That's going to take a little longer. But those are the things that really help people. It helps seniors, helps people keep staying here. But it was just something that was really good to work and to pass something that's meaningful, that moves our state forward. And when you mentioned the sales tax, so there's a Supreme Court case, I think 3 or 4 years ago, called the Wayfair Furniture decision. And there was ruled that if you buy online or sell online, you have to collect or remit sales tax to the states. States were losing tens of millions of dollars, and brick and mortar shops were losing money. And that really evened the playing field. But what happened is states' coffers were just, we're collecting all those sales tax dollars along with the stock market. I'll spend like 30 seconds on the volatility cap. That means after $3.15 billion of income tax each quarter, 4 quarters a year, comes as revenue to the state of Connecticut. After we put money in anything excess goes into the rainy day fund, and that's where we get about nearly $4 billion now. And 15% of that, when it exceeds that, money's put toward our pension obligations, a long-term obligation. That's been a problem in Connecticut. I believe Kevin Lembaugh just paid down $61 billion for last year, and we're slated to pay, I think, I'm not sure if I'm I'm good with numbers. I don't remember the exact number. 1.2 or 1.3 billion next year. These are things created from the volatility cap when we work together, and so with that would really helped us. But what Paul said is important. We've gotten so much federal money, nearly $10 billion in Connecticut, $2.9 billion in non-discretionary income, and that's what we've been spending on certain things, certain programs. We have about $700 million left to spend, and that we both voted. I think it was bipartisan. It was only 2 no votes the last night of session that it would be up to the legislature to spend that money, allocate that money. And that's where I don't understand why the governor wants more executive power, because we took that authority away, which we should. It's our role as Connecticut senators and representatives. But we did pass that bipartisanly. It was, I think, the chamber was 2 no votes. I think the Senate was unanimous. Mm-hmm. That's a lot to say, but you know what I mean.
Absolutely. And, we had a lot of people coming into the state from New York, and we had a lot of spending. You go anywhere, you'll see that things are sold out, whether it was people not going on vacations.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of sales tax, not only from that Wayfair Act, but there was a lot of spending. And I spoke on appropriations, and I said, if it was my decision, I would say, let's take advantage of the Head Start. Let's utilize that money appropriately. Let's not say, okay, we have this extra money, let's spend that. And I guess maybe that's just the way I run my personal life and my business. But you need to be responsible with the money, because we may not get another bite at that apple. And if we're spending it, and it's not going to be there next year or next budget,
right,
there's going to be issues there. So we have to make sure we take advantage of those Head Starts.
We have like 3 minutes left. We did also pass. We both support Care for Kids, and then there's also dental and vision for I think newborn to 26 years old. I think that's really important. Paul and I had office hours last week, and some of the folks were there that work for the organizations came to thank us. So that was something. We did a lot of good things. It's hard in one 27-minute show to go over everything, but we're going to hold office hours the end of August. We're going to start them again. In the past, we did them at McDonald's. Right now, McDonald's is closed in the center of town inside. So we're going to do our first one the end of August, and we'll put it on our Facebook, or you can go to our website or the paper at Moonrise Cafe in North Haven.
Yep.
Near Bellini's.
They were gracious enough to offer us.
And Paul, actually, you set that up.
Yep, they were gracious enough to offer us a place to meet with the constituents, and honestly, I'm sure you may feel the same way. This is truly my favorite part, is getting to speak to everybody, and again, hear their issues, but really get to talk to our constituents. That was probably the best part of campaigning, was getting to see everybody, and I'm truly excited to see everybody in district. Looking forward to it. To
be a good legislator, or good at anything, you have to listen to people, and then you listen, but you do your best to act on it. And if you can't do it, you say, I can't do it. But you want to listen to one another. That's what I think people are craving for us to do our job and be honest with one another. We're not perfect by any means, but we try to be out there all the time and listen and get things done. No matter what your party is, our job is to represent everybody. And I've always felt that, and I think I've done that. Obviously, I'm never going to please everybody, but you do your best you can. And you say when you think you made a mistake, you say when you did your best and you got it done. But it's always a team effort. And like I said, I'm looking at what people we work with across the room right now, and we have such a great group of people we work with in the Capitol.
Absolutely.
And, it's just an honor and pleasure. And I'm going to let you wrap it up. We got about 30 seconds. I call him the Rookie of the Year.
Oh boy, 30 seconds. I talk too much.
No, you don't.
But absolutely, with our staff, truly makes all of the difference. They help us get back to the constituents and make all the things that we do possible. So without our staff, it would be a real challenge. And before I let you close it up, but hopefully we'll be having some guests, and maybe we can get
what I was going to say.
Mike Frieda or Len Fasano. I'd love to have Len back in, and Len's also in some capacity back at the Capitol. So we'd love to have him in to tell us a little bit about that. But go ahead and wrap it up.
No, it's just it's a pleasure working together, and it's a pleasure serving a great town of North Haven and our community, and I know you feel the same way, and we've got to know each other well over the last year, and it's really a good working relationship, and along with Mike and Len in the past, it's really always a community effort. But thank you all. Paul and I will be around town, and please feel free to reach out to us anytime, and we're both honored to serve our districts. Thank you.